Hey, what's up people? This video is about medium-sized folding knives. Now typically a medium-sized folding knife is something that you have just enough blade length and just enough handle length for it to do the cutting task you want to do. And I think the best description, or the most used description, is not the best one, but the most used is that it is about a 3.5-inch bladed knife. However, I will argue that a medium-sized folding knife can go anywhere from right under 3 inches, which is like 7.5 centimeters, all the way to 3.5, which is 9 centimeters of blade length. Why is it that there are knives that can be just under 3 inches and still fall into this category? Well, that's actually very simple. If we take a small knife like the Delica, for instance, we can see it has a short cutting edge. This is a 3-inch blade. And then a handle that is also short, so this is definitely a small knife. But if you take a similar profile, so the Sage right here has a similar overall profile, just has a little bit more cutting edge, but the way that it is designed, you can hold it so you get more room in the handle. And even though you have a longer cutting edge, but the same overall profile, right? You can hold it in a way that it is actually becoming a medium-sized knife despite the 3-inch blade. So I would argue that 3-inch knives can also fall into this medium-sized category for that reason. And the Sage is a fantastic knife in that category, that smaller medium-sized folding knife. As a matter of fact, there are 4 different categories. So we have the smaller knives like the Sage, we have the balanced knives, the long cutting edge, short handled knives, and the short cutting edge, long handled knives. But let's finish with the small category first. The Demco 80-20.5 is definitely a knife that is in this category. Has a small 3-inch blade but a long handle, therefore it is a medium-sized knife despite that smaller blade. I'm not sure what to think about the 80-20.5 anymore. I don't like the Taiwanese production as much as I used to. I think the American Demco knives is where it's at. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that 80-22. I think Demco knives, they struggle a little bit with their smaller designs, and maybe they figure it out now, I don't know. But yeah, in terms of folding knives, I'm only gonna buy the USA made stuff in the future. Fixed blades I think are still good from Taiwan, but yeah, the main problem with these is that they're just overpriced, and I prefer a Sage much more to a 80-20.5 because it's in that. Actually, let's compare these. These are in the same size range. The 80-20.5 is a little bit longer, but I don't feel like it gives you more handle space really. You run out of room in both of these knives. So, and I think this one is even comfortable because it's more neutral, right? It's not as defined. So yeah, these are the smaller, medium-sized folders. And then we have the short cutting edges, long handled folders in this size range. Most well-known knife in this category, the PM2, or any Spyderco for that matter. I think Spyderco is pretty much dominating the short cutting edges, long handled, 3.5-inch bladed knives. And yeah, so we can see this in the Stretch too, short cutting edge, long handle. The Stretch is basically a variation of a PM2, right? And then the Manix has that same overall profile. I think I'm gonna do a dedicated video where I compare the Manix Stretch and PM2. So I'm gonna leave that out for this video because it's getting way too long otherwise. So because we have the short cutting edges and long handles, oh well, first off we should talk about what are these useful for. Well, with the smaller medium-sized knives you have a short cutting edge, therefore you get a ton of control over that shorter cutting edge, and you still get a lightweight compact package to carry. With these, the package you carry is a little bit bigger, but you also get more hand space. In some cases you get more hand comfort, right? The Stretch is a very comfortable knife. You could carry this with longer, with gloves on or with bigger hands very comfortably, but you still get a ton of control over that cutting edge. It's not my favorite category, to be honest, because I always feel like I have too little cutting edge available. But again, if you're opening packages, if you're very close to what you're cutting, it might be a good thing. So next up we have the complete opposite, which would be long cutting edge, short handle, very much present in most Kershaw designs, at least the ones that I have. So you can see we have a longer cutting edge but a shorter handle. And like I said, this one is just enough cutting edge, just enough handle. The the Kershaw Blur might be the best like example for a medium-sized folder, right? It's just enough. Is it the best knife? I don't think so. It's good. I like the hollow grind. I like the 14C28N, even though the factory edge was horrible on this one, but it's a good steel. It's a very good steel, in fact, and it cuts very well. It's an okay knife, and I think that's pretty much true for all Kershaw knives, right? They're like okay knives. They have a lot of times they have longer cutting edges and shorter handles. So depending on your hand size, this might be good. This is a Volt 2 that I have been collecting because it's like an iconic RJ Martin design. Don't really use this one. So most of my Kershaw knives are older designers, right? So this is the Charlotte. It's a Canonian design, short handle, long cutting edge with that recurve. Canonian gives his knives very often like short handles. I don't know what's the reason for that, but he does it a lot. So yeah, it's very present, very much present here as well. Yeah, cool design and a compact frame, right? Arguably the most famous knife with a long cutting edge and a short handle would be the Benchmade 940, right? So you have a long cutting edge and a short handle. This knife is very much special in a sense because it has the cutting edge of a longer knife, of a way bigger knife, and then it has the frame of a medium-sized folder, and then when you close it, it becomes a small knife even. So if you hold it up next to a Delica, it carries, in my opinion, better than a Delica. So this knife carries like a small knife, but brings the cutting edge of a bigger knife, which is great. Yeah, the 940 iconic design seems to have like a reincarnation, if you will. It's very popular again now. And yeah, I think it's not a perfect knife. It has some flaws, obviously, like every knife has. But yeah, I personally couldn't live without the Benchmade 940. And yeah, main flaws that it has is that the edge angle is very, very high. So if you lay it on a stone, like in comparison to like a Zebenza you lay on the stone and it's very, very flat. 940 you lay on the stone and it's a super high angle, and it's very thick behind the edge, and the edge retention is not great on that S40V. But yeah, other than that, it's a fantastic design. I think Benchmade manages their sizes really well, and the way they design the spaces overall, they are very efficient with that. So Benchmade has some good designing going on. A company that is not very efficient with their spaces, despite them still being very great, I think, is Cold Steel. So Cold Steel, you also get a long cutting edge, but you get a super long frame in this Code 4 here. So this has the overall size of a big knife, but it has a 3.5 inch blade, therefore it's only a medium-sized knife. And because it puts you in a saber grip, you also run out of room back here. Well, obviously you could choke up, but choking up does not make this knife more efficient. It's not comfortable in this position. It's not a position you want to be in. You want to be in the saber grip because that's how it's designed. So typically we can see that knives that have curvature in the handle, they use more space, even though you have less room available. And the thinness of the construction also does not help. Look at that thick tip though. It's a lot of tip strength in this knife, and in general a lot of strength in these Cold Steels. I like the Code 4. I think it's a perfect knife, despite it not being designed super efficiently. I think it's a really, really good knife. One of the best in this category. So Cold Steel does this a lot. They have longer cutting edges, and then they have handles where you run out of room unless you choke up. So yeah, this is very much present in this company. I think it's interesting that every company goes for the same design over and over again. Like only Spyderco is present in this short cutting edge, long handled category, and then cold steel is only present in the other category, at least with the knives that I have. But it's interesting to see that there is some repetition in that. So with the Finn Wolf, you also run out of room back here. Lots of strength on the tip. This knife is great. It's only held back by its price, I think. Yeah, so knives do that over and over again. So the Eclipse would be a similar situation to the Code 4. You have a long cutting edge, but because the handle puts you naturally in a saber grip, you run out of room back here. So therefore this knife is in the category of long cutting edge, short handle, because you lack the space back here. If you could hold it in a hammer grip comfortably, you would have the space, but that's not a position you want to be in, because you end up on these ridges and you don't want to be here. So you want to be in this position, and therefore you don't have as much room. So efficient designing would be, let's say a Sebenza. Sebenza has more cutting edge than an Eclipse, but the handle leaves you so much more room back here because it's a straight design and it's a neutral design. It doesn't force you in a position, right? So you have a lot more grip. The Sebenza Large, in my opinion, would be falling in the large category because the blade is over 3.5 inches. So I think 3.5 inches is the limit unless the handle is really short, but it isn't in this case. The funny thing is, if we hold it up next to a PM2, it's the exact same size. We just have a lot more cutting edge and a more comfortable handle. And yeah, this knife has the frame of a medium-sized folder, but brings the blade and cutting edge length of a large folder, which is great. And in general, the Chris Reeve knives are really efficient with their cutting edge usage. So if you take a small Sebenza, you can see we have the same cutting edge length than a PM2, but the handle length is a lot shorter. So we have a lot more cutting edge in these knives for the frame that you are carrying. So yeah, I guess some companies are more efficient than others. I think in some cases, if the blade is slightly longer than 3.5 inches, but the handle is too short and you run out of room, I would still put it in a medium-sized category, like this Kaiser Silver, for instance. It's a good knife, hollow ground, N690, 3D contoured micarta. The only thing that I don't like about it is that the blade tends to go off-centered. So there's some quality issue here. But other than that, it's a good knife. But you can see this one is slightly longer, but it still falls in that medium-sized category because you are lacking the grip length here. This was present on some older SOG knives as well. So you have a long cutting edge on this Visionary 2, but then you run out of room back here in the handle. And therefore this is a medium-sized knife despite it having the blade length of a larger folder. Also has the frame and attitude of a medium folder, I think. It's not, it doesn't feel like a big knife. So this can be good or bad. So sometimes you want to bring more cutting edge with a more compact frame, and that's great. Yeah, and sometimes you want to bring more handle with less cutting edge, I guess. Now, let's talk about the more balanced stuff. So knives that have a more balanced overall design. The only traditional knife that I could find in this category would be this Boker knife. Most of my traditionals are either small knives or big knives, but they're not in between. So in between sizes are very rare, I think, in those traditional sizes, categories, I should say. So this Boker Fallow, made out of 440C with bone handle, would fall in that category. Very beautiful lines on this one. Yeah, so this one you have enough space in the handle, but you don't have a super long cutting edge. It's a very balanced design, I think. It was very cheap when I bought it also. I don't think these are made anymore though. This is my only OTF knife. This is the Hogue Hadron, made by Hogue, made for HK. Long cutting edge, good amount of handle length here. And I kind of prefer OTFs to off the sides these days because the spring tension is built up. It's not under constant pressure, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I like that. OTFs are kind of fun. So this one is also very balanced. This is the Fox Knives FKMD Predator 2, long cutting edge, decent amount of handle. It's right at 3.5 inches, so it's not a big knife, it's still a medium-sized knife. It has the weight of a bigger knife, I think, so it's a little bit overweight, but other than that, it's great. And the weight also gives you more comfort in hand, right? It feels like a knife you want to work with. Have a thin blade stock, a very cutting efficient blade shape. N690 steel, was like 70 bucks when I bought it. Plastic scales, so this is not G10, but yeah, it's a good knife. Simple liner lock. You have an additional locking system, which you don't need, but yeah. So the most efficient knives that I have in this size range are the TRM Atom, long cutting edge, very comfortable handle. This is slightly 3D contoured and has all the good stuff that makes a TRM knife. So thin blade stock, thin cutting edge, very good knife. And the other knife that is also very efficiently designed is the Spyderco Swayback, which was recently discontinued. You can see that it has a long straight cutting edge and a decent amount of grip length. And it can be held in different positions. So this one is no longer on the market, so I'm looking forward to the next Martin Schleich is his name, I guess. Yeah, design collaboration with Spyderco, and this one is good. This one was a classic immediately when it was released, I think. Thick blade stock, thin cutting edge, hollow ground XHP, 3D contoured titanium, so super nice. Yeah, great knife. The question is, do you want to have a more balanced knife? Do you want to have more cutting edge, or do you want to have a longer handle, or do you want to go smaller within that category? I don't even know what my favorite knives in this size range are. Typically I go smaller or larger when I pick a folder, but yeah, this is a very popular size range and I can see why. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and maybe we see each other in a different video. Goodbye.